Hola peeps, and welcome to Life with Mona. So this week, as I said, we're talking about emotional intelligence. And because I have the expert here with me, Mucha Mlingo, I'm not going to try and redefine it or anything. I'll just go straight to Mucha. Mucha is one of the top three, or the three official emotional intelligence practitioners in Africa, right? So Mucha, tell me a bit more, first of all, about what you do.
Okay, so yes, as you said, my name is Mucha Mlingo, and I'm an emotional intelligence practitioner with an organization called 6 Seconds.
Okay.
6 Seconds is a global network whose work really is to inspire people to change in a positive way, and they do that using emotional intelligence.
Okay.
As you mentioned, I'm one of three. I run one of three organizations across the continent that is a preferred partner with 6 Seconds.
Now tell me, because I know there's a lot of people watching that are thinking, what exactly is EQ? We understand IQ, but what is EQ?
All right. So, I mean, emotional intelligence, if you are to look up a definition, is really the ability to be aware of, to manage and to control one's emotions, and to handle interpersonal relationships. Okay. Right, so that's what emotional intelligence is. If I simplify that, 6 Seconds has a definition. 6 Seconds has a definition I really like, which is emotional intelligence is just being smart with your feelings. Okay. Being smart with your feelings. Because the reality is the way the brain is wired, we have the emotional part of the brain and we have the rational part of the brain. And it's essential that we are aware of both and that we utilize both.
So that we meet. Yes. Both of them meet to a balance.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So give me an example. For instance, in a workplace where, or actually, let me give you a scenario which I talked about in my videos earlier. Yeah. I was talking about a project I worked on where we had writers and producers, and we were doing a show. And usually the writers, of course, were creative, so we want to go out there and spread the story. And the producers, so we're like probably the emotional part, and the producers are the rational part. Right. We have so much money. This is what the client wanted. We need product placement and all these things. So the two things refused to meet because the producers wanted a certain outlook of the show, and the writers thought that's not going to work for us to tell the show that you're telling us, you're asking us to tell. So we clashed, and in the end, the product did not come out very well because the writers withdrew, and so we did not apply ourselves, and then the producers became, authoritarian, and like, you will do what I say, and the project didn't blossom, it failed, sort of. So in a situation like that, if you walk in, if I called you and I said, you know what, Mucha, this thing is going down, help us, how would you break that down?
6 Seconds, in order to help people to practice emotional intelligence, developed a model in 1997. And that model is what we use for role training and coaching. And that model is very simple. Step number 1 is know yourself. So know yourself speaks to self-awareness, being aware of, how you behave, being aware of your moods, your feelings, your emotions.
Why you do what you do.
Understanding your drivers, right? Number 2, the second part of the model is choose yourself. So choose yourself is about being intentional. It's about telling yourself, it's about asking yourself, what options do you have? So rather than just doing something because of the way you feel, it's what options do I have? And then the third part of the model is give yourself. And give yourself is about being is about being purposeful. It's about knowing why you're doing what you're doing.
Okay, so if I'm recapping, you said the 3 components. Know yourself. So in whatever situation, know yourself. Then once you know yourself, you can be able to make informed choices based on that. And then giving yourself is now applying the choices that you've made. Is that
so giving yourself is really about self-direction. It's about so if you look at the 3, know yourself is self-management, choose yourself, know yourself is self-awareness, choose yourself is self-management, and then give yourself is self-direction. Having a reason why you do what you do, what do you really want? What is your ultimate goal? Right? So if we go back to the scenario you mentioned where you have these 2 camps, if I may call them that are, at loggerheads and they are not able to make a decision. I think for me, the first thing I would ask both parties is, what do you really want? At the end of the day.
Which is at the end of the day, in this situation would be, we want a great story.
Yes. What do you really want? So sometimes when we are caught up in conflict, and what's important to note here is that the emotional part of the brain is powerful enough to override rational thinking.
So this I know.
So it's very possible that you behave in ways that make no sense rationally, right? Because if you think about it, by withdrawing, and this is no disrespect to the writer, but by withdrawing, that doesn't make sense because it doesn't really get you towards the goal that you want to achieve.
It defeats the purpose of you being a writer.
Exactly. Yes. So I think for me, if I'm called into such such a scenario, my thing would be trying to understand, okay, what do you guys really want? What is the end goal?
Yeah.
Because when you have the end in mind, it helps to navigate. It helps you then to go back to this second element of being intentional, of choosing yourself and saying, I need to do what is necessary to achieve the end goal, rather than doing what I feel like doing.
I need to do what is necessary to achieve the end goal. Yeah. But then, wouldn't you say then that's kind of like counterintuitive? Because if we're saying we want to know and manage our emotions, then somebody else would be like, but I should be able to do what I feel because then that is my emotion and my emotion should be my truth.
No, not really. I mean, simple example, someone who's on a diet sits down for lunch and they're asked, madam, what can I give you to drink? I can give you some Fanta or I can give you some water.
Fanta, please.
Exactly, because that's what you feel like doing. It's got... I mean, yes, it's true, you want to be authentic.
Yes.
I'm not subscribing to being inauthentic. But at the end of the day, we cannot afford to be governed by our feelings. We really can't. We need to apply rational thinking as well. I mean, our feelings are there for a reason. Our feelings are data. One of the things I always say is that emotions are data. It's information that is coming to you from your body that's telling you what the status is. It doesn't mean that it's information you must obey at all times. Sometimes you have to disobey that data.
I want to go back to something you've just said. You're saying like, and I think it's quite a powerful way of putting it. You're saying emotion is data that is telling you what the status is.
Yes.
Right? So in this particular scenario, the emotion of I am going to be passive aggressive.
Yes.
What is that telling me about?
So it's telling me there's a problem. It's telling me that there's a problem either. And what I now need to do is get into the habit of interrogating that data. So, and this is why knowing yourself is important. So, asking yourself those questions. Okay, this is what I feel. Why do I feel that way? And
is it really about this project, or do I have a problem with validation, for instance?
Exactly.
And this is what I am.
Exactly. A lot of times with passive aggression, it comes back to this feeling like you need to be you've not been validated. Your thoughts have not been appreciated. What you're saying is not being appreciated. You feel ignored, and so you decide to just act out.
Because I think almost my entire family we're passive aggressive because only one person was allowed to yell in my household growing up, and that was my mother. So nobody else was allowed to raise their voices. Right. Which was a good thing. She was trying to teach us how to communicate.
Yes.
But something else that we learned was just be passive aggressive. So if you were having a mood or whatever, you learn to go to your room, sulk it, finish, and then come back. So part of that is I think we failed to learn really how to speak up and speak out.
And I mean, to be honest with you, I think that very many of us growing up in the African context did not necessarily know how to communicate our emotions.
Because we're not touchy-feely.
We're not really. We don't really talk about our feelings. I mean, you talk about your upbringing. To be honest with you, very many people who are roughly, our age, guessing your age, roughly our age, roughly, very few people roughly our age would say they grew up in a home where their feelings were relevant.
True. Yeah, what are those?
Yeah,
what are those? Get on with it.
Most of us, our feelings were not relevant, right?
Yes.
So we have learned to ignore our feelings. Many of us operate on autopilot. And that's what usually causes conflict, because I just have this overwhelming feeling, but I don't really know how to deal with it. And so I just repress it,
or I
ignore it, or I act out. But what we should be doing is understanding that emotions are data. There's no negative emotion. It's just data. Even anger, it's data. It's what you do with the data that then becomes potentially harmful.
The same thing people say about money. Money in itself is it's a substance. It's what we do with it.
What you do with
attitude towards it.
Exactly. So I think going back to the example you shared, for me, the key would be helping people to understand that we have the same end goal. Now, our process may be different. So let's figure out how to come up with a process that works for everyone.
Do you ever walk into a scene and discover the problem is nobody knows what they want?
I think, no. I mean, I don't think I've experienced a scenario where no one knows what they want. I think I've experienced a scenario where no one is willing to say what they want. So they know it,
Ooh,
I think if we're honest, we know what we want, but maybe because of, the fear that if I express myself truly, there will be repercussions.
Or I think it's impossible anyway, so why should I even voice it?
So what you find is people know what they like, but they don't have the room to have that discussion. So then, our job there is to facilitate conversation and help the leaders to understand that, in an organization, you want a culture where people feel free to talk, to innovate, to try, and not afraid of consequences, because then that really stifles innovation in organizations.
I think we had talked a bit earlier, before we started rolling, earlier on we were talking, and one of the things you said you're holding a conference coming in February.
Yes.
And an interesting thing that you said was you're going to be talking to educators as well. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I think our education system, particularly in Kenya, for those who went through 844, now they know how old I am. For those who went through 844, is that they resisted us questioning, like those systems, those 16 subjects, and I understand it. I need to cram 16 subjects into this person's head. I don't have time for you to question why Vasco da Gama, why are we learning? I don't have, he came, he discovered, take it, so I think.
And then regurgitate it.
And then regurgitate it. And I think that kind of like translated into our organizations as well. Would you say that is sort of true with your experience?
Definitely that is the case. That is the case for sure. So just quickly to talk about the conference. So in February, the third week in February, the week after Valentine's, we'll have a 2-day conference, emotional intelligence conference. And really the 2 days are split, the days are split into 2. Day 1 is for educators. So that's for anyone in education. So it's teachers, head teachers, people who own schools, who
is this
really,
also for universities as well?
Universities, yes. Anyone in the education space. And the conversation there is about social emotional learning. So that is learning that encompasses emotional intelligence. And it's really understanding that when we cultivate an environment where the emotions are taken care of, learners learn better. Because at the end of the day, we realize that there is a need. And a lot of times when you talk about emotional intelligence, people think it's just this fluffy thing.
Emotions are for women.
And it's something that, maybe our women need to go through that program. But emotions
do you
don't
actually
have a
ever hear
gender.
that?
Definitely.
But emotions, let's send the women.
Let's send the women. Come and do a program for our women.
Are you serious?
Yes. But emotions don't have a gender. In the African context is that we have taught our boys that, hey, you're a man.
Be strong.
Be strong. Don't cry. Don't talk about your feelings.
What you're supposed to do.
But what that means is that when someone is overwhelmed, when someone is drowning, they don't feel they can talk about it. They don't feel they can, with women at least you have the advantage of your friends. You can just call a friend and say, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm dying from pressure. Yes, exactly. But with guys, they don't necessarily have that. And that's a crisis, which is why you're finding higher incidences of suicide amongst men in Kenya. And that's a scary statistic. And, emotional intelligence speaks to some of that. This idea that, we must not ignore our emotions, that they are integral part of us, that thinking, feeling, and action, it's all intertwined.
You had mentioned something interesting about people calling you in to say, maybe our women can go for this emotional training. So let's talk about emotions, women versus men. For women, I know we've always been accused of being overly emotional. For men have been accused of being underly, if I can say, underly emotional. So what is the core difference for you as far as emotional intelligence in men and in women?
Within the emotional intelligence model, so we talked about know yourself, choose yourself, and give yourself. We have 8 competencies, and those competencies are what are measured, and when you put them together, they give an overall score. So what you may find is there may be some competencies that women score higher, and some competencies that men score higher. But overall,
it balances out.
So we cannot say that women are more emotionally intelligent than men, or men are more emotionally intelligent than women. I'll give you an example. One of the competencies of emotional intelligence is empathy.
Women are more empathetic.
And typically, yes. I mean, from conversations, from research, it's found that women tend to be more empathetic than men. Right? So probably you find that if we did a score just on empathy. Women may be higher. But there could be another.
What do men score high at?
I mean, I don't have a specific response, but in terms of the different competencies, some of the other competencies are, you know, being able to pick up on the data.
Okay.
So another competency is navigating your emotions.
Okay.
So, for example, I'm angry. How do I navigate out of that to a space that I'd rather
be productive at?
Another competency is consequential thinking.
Okay.
So that's the ability of weighing up the pros and cons.
That's probably a high main one.
And so, you know, that and this is not based on research. But that's probably the one I would pick.
I think so too. I think so too.
That's the one I would pick and say, I reckon men are probably higher. But ultimately, the reality is that when we look on average at our, you know, the base of respondents that we have as 6 seconds, male, female,
it's the same. So basically, expressing your emotions and having emotional intelligence are two very different things.
Yeah, because emotional intelligence, remember, is the ability to be aware of, to manage and to control your emotions. So just because you are overly expressive, it means you may be aware, but maybe your challenge is the navigation part.
That's true.
The controlling part.
That's true.
So whereas, you know, we often think women are overly expressive as far as their emotions are concerned, and I think you use the word underly, but men are, you know, below average in terms of their expression. That in itself doesn't necessarily translate automatically to being
they're less
higher or lower in emotional intelligence. Because emotional intelligence is more than just...
It's rounded.
Yes, it's more than just being able to express. It's being aware of, it's managing, and it's expressing. And what's interesting is, a lot of times, we express emotions without being aware of them.
Give me an example.
I'm having a conversation with my spouse, maybe, and they say something that really annoys me. I'm angry, and I just start shouting. But I'm shouting without actually... I've not realized.
Stopped yourself.
I've not stopped myself to think about picking up on the data. This data called anger. And realizing that, okay, in this moment, I'm really angry. And probably the thing I'm about to say may not be the most appropriate.